Welcome to the Florence Foodies podcast, a place for the community where we come together, share the stories, voices, and experiences that make Florence feel like home.
So I'm here with Zach McKay, and Zach, thank you for inviting us in and taking the time to put this together. I'm really excited that we got an opportunity to do this. And so I kind of reached out on a whim to Tanya Jackson. I reached out to you, and both of y'all graciously responded and were open into doing it. I think that it's a good opportunity to kind of get out there and get a little bit more exposure to the community. And so real quick, we did this with the episode with her, but I want to do it again. And this is more so for the audience. Part of the vision behind the Florence Foodies podcast specifically was to create, there's a slogan that we have there that says it's a place for the community to gather. And the idea was just that. So food is really the one thing that brings people together globally. And especially with, the internet and Facebook and Instagram, social media, you see people like Mark Wiens traveling all over the planet and eating food. Food really brings us together, and even in our community right here in Florence. And so that's kind of the bedrock of everything that we're doing. But building on that bedrock is community. And we just so happen to be having this special election. So Mayor Barnes' vacated at-large city council seat is available. We have Tanya Jackson, who was on the podcast earlier in the week, and now we have Zach McKay, who is running for that seat. And what better place or platform for them to be introduced to the community is my idea. And just get to, in a casual, nonpartisan environment, just share a little bit about who they are, where they're from. And of course, we'll talk a little bit about platform, but we'll also talk a little bit about food, of course, because that's what we do and that's what we like. With that being said, Zach, I appreciate you, just like I said, allowing us to come in and set up and do this. And I'm looking forward to being able to chat with you a little bit.
Same, man. I appreciate you having me, and I look forward to this. Again, thank you for the opportunity. I know, like you said, food's such a big part of the community, so I'm excited to be here, excited to have this conversation. So just thank you for having me, and thank you to all your viewers for for allowing me to be here.
What you're doing, the seat that you're running for, and I want to talk a little bit about specifically what that position is and what it entails as we get into this a little bit. But I think that especially in our culture and an environment that it is in terms of politics, it's just good to be educated, in the basic things. I'm big on information and, understanding how things work and why things work the way they do. What you're taking the opportunity to do and what you're pursuing is a big deal. It is a big deal for our community. It's good, like I said, to sit down and get to know one another.
Absolutely. I'm a firm believer in transparency, and I think it's very important for everybody to know their politicians, especially on the local level, because, yes, we have our federal and state politicians. Obviously, there's a lot of division at times in that area, but when it comes to local politics, that's really what affects our day-to-day, but also it's the people that you should be able to reach out to and speak with, communicate, and have conversations with. God willing, if I am elected, I hope to be that voice for the community. It's again, an honor to even have this platform that we do have. But again, I don't want to take that for granted. That is a seat that really, again, it needs transparency is huge. We need to be able to speak to our representatives. Again, whether that's myself or whether that's my opponent who ends up winning, we need that line of communication.
Yeah, I agree. So with that said, why don't we start this way and just get to know a little bit about your background. So where are you from? What's your relationship to the city of Florence? That kind of thing.
So I moved to Florence, I guess, the end of fourth or fifth grade. And so I've been a resident of Florence ever since then. I graduated from West Florence, played baseball there. I did go to the Citadel down in Charleston, played baseball at the Citadel there for a few years. And I guess I lived in Charleston 2 years after graduation. I worked at the Chamber of Commerce down there. So really got to understand kind of the needs of local business and work. We had a lobbying wing of the chamber there, so got to kind of work on policy that did affect our citizens as well as our small businesses. And as well as I do that the culinary scene in Charleston is top notch. And I think we're not too far behind. I know that's kind of maybe being a visionary, but I do think that we have the opportunity with our proximity kind of to a lot of our surrounding areas It seems like we have that opportunity as well. So that's kind of a asset that I think that I do bring to the table. From then I moved on. I moved back to Florence, I guess in 2019, I believe. Started working for the U.S. Senate. I did constituent services, which, and I've said it once, I'll say it a million times. I do think constituent services is very similar to the role of what your city councilman should be, and really county council as well. In the regard that really all you are doing is being that liaison to whether it be a federal entity, a state entity, or local entities, but local programs to help the citizens. And again, I think when you think about a councilman, I really believe that's kind of what that is, being there to help bridge the gap from the citizens to these entities. I think when it comes to federal entities like Social Security, the VA, it's really beneficial. But again, a lot of folks just don't know who to talk to. So that's kind of what I did over there. And I think it's an asset. Again, the network that I built, I think, is an asset to bring to the table of City Council. And now I'm doing economic development over in Marion County. I'm the Director of Economic Development. And that, again, I think in doing that job, I've worked with infrastructure upgrades for industry. I've brought jobs to the table or to Marion County, obviously added to the tax base. So I think not only that recruitment side, but also knowing the grant programs, knowing kind of those avenues, the different avenues to help the SBA, working with the chambers, working with the community over in Marion County. I do think that that's an asset in itself as well, and knowing the different programs that are available. So I think that is, my resume kind of, I hope, speaks for itself in regards to why I'm a good fit. And so that's kind of, I guess, a little bit about me. Obviously, I'll address the elephant in the room. I did have an accident. Obviously, I'm not walking. I had an accident back on October 1st, 2023. So it left me as a quadriplegic. But I'll be honest with you, I've had conversations about running before this. I just thought the timing was right. Has nothing to do with the injury. I do have a little bit more time on my hands due to the injury, but I'm just happy to be available, happy to get back out there and talk with the community. When I did get injured, this community rallied behind me like no other, and that's kind of what pushed me forward. I think I always wanted to run for my district seat. Obviously, this is an at-large seat, so it's the entire city. And it's exciting opportunity. Again, from my perspective, it's an opportunity to give back to the community that gave me so much. I got injured, and this community rallied behind me, and it was a miracle. It was awesome to watch. It definitely God had his hands on it, and it's been a blessing just to be here. But then again, to come back home to a community that showed so much support for me, I'll never be able to say thank you enough, but I do think that this is an opportunity to give back to the community.
Yeah, that was one thing that I was going to ask. Actually, next would have been, and you kind of touched on it, was just the why. Why are you running for city council? Why now?
That has a lot to do with it. Again, I think not necessarily the injury itself. I've always wanted to be a part of it. I've always said I wanted to run for some sort of elected position, but never really knew exactly what I wanted to do. Again, I think my experience kind of in the public sector, in public service as well, it just seemed to me like a good fit. And again, I grew up here. This is home to me, always will be. Again, the community itself rallied behind me, which was great. And again, I just want to give back. And, I look at a lot of my friends who are starting to move back to Florence. It's awesome to see. But again, we need to, instead of having them move back, try to retain them from the beginning. Again, with what I do over in Marion County, we work a lot on talent, not only retention of talent, but also developing a talent pipeline. And obviously that's for more industry-related stuff. But again, there's no reason. I look at Marion, we've got a culinary arts program that their culinary arts students used to cater to my economic outlook conference every year. So getting to work with folks like that is awesome, but also seeing programs like that in the schools. and continuing to work for programs that do fit our community needs, whether that be people in the food and beverage industry, whether that be folks for industry or whatnot. I think that there's a lot that we have to offer. And again, there's a lot that we can do to retain this talent and continue to grow. And let's grow from within.
That's interesting. I didn't know that Marion had a culinary arts program, and we don't have that. To my knowledge, am I missing that? We don't have a culinary arts program, do we?
To my knowledge, we do not. And that's a good start. It gives you even again, like I look at our Economic Outlook conference, it gives them not only an opportunity to display that we do have a program like that, but also it gives these a chance for these students to get out there and show what they do. As economic at my conference, at least we typically have about 100 folks, but sometimes a little bit more at that conference. But now you've got all these students again from getting in front of local business leaders, whether it be whether it be the food and beverage industry or whether it not be, you still are out there networking and meeting folks, whether again it's in the sector you want to go down or not. You're still able to build that network and realize. And again, Marion County is obviously a little bit smaller than Florence County and the city of Florence even. But nonetheless, it gives them an opportunity to network and kind of see not only if obviously serving food is and fixing it is in their line, but then they get to build a network, which I think is huge. I mean, everybody's heard the saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And, let's start developing talent pipelines, but also networks for our youth so that they do know. I mean, everybody can say that we're working on retainment, but unless we're actually doing and being proactive in retaining, what good does it do once they're already leaving?
I remember when I was in high school just thinking about being ready to leave Florence. Like I was like, I can't wait to get out. But then, I mean, it didn't take too long, but especially at this point in my life and getting older, your perspective changes as you mature. Absolutely. And I have so much appreciation for our community. Like, I mean, if God sent me somewhere else, then that's where I would be. But I'm perfectly content at home. I really love being here. I love the city of Florence. I love Florence County. And I think a lot of that desire to get out and do something else comes from sometimes you can't see the forest for the trees. Sometimes we miss what's right in front of us. And we really do have a great community and a lot of opportunity. If we could build on that, that's even better. So in line with that, here's what I'd like to ask. And I asked this to Tanya as well. And she mentioned City University. So we put that out there. And if anybody didn't see that episode, let's go back to that again at cityofflorence.com. I'll put the link down in the description of this episode, just like that one, where you can go to City University and learn a little bit more about how your city functions, from the mayor to city manager, city council, so on and so forth. But I want to ask you in your words, how does in this case, an at-large city council member practically, functionally go about impacting and affecting change in our community?
And I'm a firm believer of learning by hands-on experience. I think that when it comes to actually making a change, you have to have experience within. And again, I've been working in economic development. I've worked in the federal government. I've seen all of this stuff happen. So I think that it takes a lot more than just one person, obviously. And so I do hope to get on there and to get on council and make a change. Again, and utilize some of those, skill sets, if you will, that I've acquired through the years. Because again, I think, there's a lot of programs out there that we don't know about. Small business loans. I think we should have, I look at our city council right now. We don't have a coalition between business leaders downtown. We don't have a food industry coalition that's meeting regularly with our whether it be the municipality or whether it be county. I mean, we should have a regular meeting and again bridge that gap from our elected leaders also to our business owners, to those folks out in that area. So not only can we try to assist them and help them, but again, economically, we all thrive. If our businesses are thriving, we will all thrive. So again, if there's opportunities from a government side to kind of bridge that gap and be transparent from the out or from the inside looking out, there's a way that we can move. And again, you're allowing the citizens to have their input in the direction we're going, which I think is very important. I think a lot of elected officials think it's always about them making that difference. And in my opinion, it is all about being a voice for the community, being a voice for your residents. And again, I mean, obviously, being in economic development, I do a lot with corporations, but everybody, I mean, over 80% of businesses in the United States are small business. So and small business is the backbone of our economy. So we have to be there and have to help the small business as much as possible. And I think I think the city should be in charge of seminars, again, whether it be with the SBA, whether it be with rural development, whoever it may be. But there's a lot of loans out there, a lot of grants out there that people don't know about when it comes to, again, I mean, helping out with your overhead costs, whether it be from the beginning or a established business. There's opportunities that that we're not taking advantage of because people don't know about. And I think that's something that, again, I would love. I think my first initiative, obviously, I'm a very big proponent against our infrastructure, and we can get to that later on in this conversation. But I am a big proponent of again, having coalitions, having groups and steering committees, if you will, to kind of be able to voice your opinion. And again, with these committees, I don't think you should have every one of your councilmen, but I think you should at least have one member from city, one member from county, to be there, and then bring that up. Again, be the voice for these folks. And if there are more at city and county, that's great. I just know if you get more than 3, you're going to have a quorum, and then technically it's a council meeting. So if you can keep it below that, but again, have a active community to where we can and where we encourage voices from our food and beverage, from our small business leaders on what we need. I mean, we could talk till our lungs run out, but it's until we work with the community, nothing will ever get accomplished. And again, it's always going to be divisive until we can find a way that, again, everybody has input on. I look at strategic planning. It's a state statute that each county should have a 5-year strategic plan. And I believe it's the same with the cities. But in my eyes, you should have stakeholders from every sector on that. You should have, again, a voice, multiple voices from food and bev. You should have voices from industry. You should have voices from your city and county leaders, but also the citizens. I mean, again, it's community that this is about. And yes, we're growing. There's no doubt about it. I'm a firm believer that you're either growing or dying as a community, as a county, as any type of population body. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, you've got to grow strategically. You have to have a plan, and you got to stick to that plan. Again, and before I get on my soapbox about our infrastructure, I'll stop at that. But there's got to be a plan in place, and it has to be executed. We can't just throw things at a wall until it sticks. We've got to be very precise and make sure we do know what our vision is.
I don't mind the soapbox. Some of that is what we're here for. So, like I said, just educate the public, talk about the matters. Nobody's hiding this stuff on social media anyways. Everybody's talking about it. So it's like, it's no different here. So just to kind of skim across some of these things and just touch on a bit. And I want to ask this first. And to be fair, I asked the same question in the last podcast episode earlier this week. Obviously, when we had Debbie come through, that was a big. This has been brought up multiple times, but that was a big explosion through social media with everything that happened with the water. So my question is, when you look at the water situation, and I've had people say things like, well, you've got city water management is stretching out to places like Timmonsville, Quimby out in the county, and maybe that's problematic. I'm just asking, when you look at that situation, what thoughts come to mind? What is your view? What's your perspective on our current water situation? Any ideas you might have on that?
It's embarrassing. I've worked on infrastructure projects before. I've done, again, wastewater extension, whether it be gas line, except nonetheless with industry. So I have a little bit of experience in that. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I'm a guru in it. But we are so far gone at this point that I don't know. I mean, this is an issue that's been, just developing for decades, and it's us kicking it down the wayside or kicking the can down the road and just hoping that at some point we'll find money to fix it or it'll fix itself. We're at a point now, and I know that there was an audit recently, and don't quote me on this number, but I know, and I won't even say, I know it was well over a quarter, so well over 25% of the water that goes out into our system is non-revenue creating. And what that means is essentially more than 25% of the water that is going out that we are sending out, we're losing by cracks, leaks in our system. So, and I can tell you the city's not paying for that. The taxpayers are paying for that. That's a problem. And you've seen the issues. You've seen the brown water. We've definitely got stormwater issues too, and we can get there in a second. But when it comes to our actual water and wastewater, we're not in good shape. And if you talk to folks, and again, this is where transparency really, in my opinion, is a huge issue. Because if you talk to our city council, if you talk to the folks at the water department, water is our bread and butter. Water is our moneymaker. It's half of our budget as far as expenses. If you look at it, and again, I'll say this: you cannot tell me that we are creating revenue when we have as much, and when our system's failing as bad as it is. We've got leaks everywhere. Standing water all across town, but yet we're outwardly, our communications are saying, no, we're making money on this system. And not just making money, it's our largest revenue creator as far as the budget looks. And again, if it was doing as well as we're being told, we wouldn't have these leaks. We wouldn't be losing that much revenue. So there's some serious issues that we need to look at. Again, sometimes it is flushing out the system that just creates that sediment that's sitting there to come up and get in our water and create brown water. And I understand that. That's, again, due to old rusty pipes, but that's different. The issue is we're losing so much of our water that's losing revenue. And again, that there's no individual at the city that's paying for that. That's all of us. That's our tax dollars going into that. And we're being, in my opinion, there's no transparency on this. We took a $650 million bond 2 or 3 years ago to get our system up to par. But again, that's up to par for 3 years ago. It's a 10, 15, I can't remember. It's either 10 or 15 year bond that we're paying off. And so in 10 to 15 years, we're back to par with what we need to be in 2022, not where we need to be in 2032 or 2037, whichever it is. So again, we're just going to get to the end of the finish line and go right back into the same situation. We're going to have issues again with it being old, with having an aged system. So I'm a firm believer that we need to bring every and all options to the table. And, I'm not so sure that it's not something we should vote on in the public. I mean, let the public decide. This is a opinion that's not very well thought of, but I think it's one we should really take a long, hard look into, is going private. Let's sell out our program and our system. I'm not saying that that's the definite answer, but I think there's no reason we should cut that. There's no reason we should take that off the table. Over in Marion County, where I do economic development, again, we work with Grand Strand Water and Sewer. They're awesome, easy to work with. Anytime we have a project, they're on board with expanding. And again, that's people that do water, wastewater for a living, not John Doe from the recreation department that we're putting over in charge of water. So to me, it's let's take advantage of the experienced folks when we have them. Again, if we create a rev share, whatever that may be, we can have revenues coming in, but we don't have to be the ones fixing and taking it, trying to do so. I mean, again, I don't care who we have. You look at how much time and how much effort's going into recruitment for high-paying jobs. Working for the government's never high-paying. Everybody knows it's all about the benefits. When it comes to working for the government, how are we planning on recruiting these top-of-the-line folks that again, whether it be in water or wastewater, whatever it may be, why are we competing with the private sector who's going to, again, be able to pay a lot more and, again, help out our local economy by doing so, especially if we can have a rev share opportunity, or if it's, again, a huge, again, I don't know what that price tag looks like when it comes to selling the system, but I think it's an option that we need to. I look at, if we do sell it, let's invest that dollar. I look at North Carolina, whenever the tobacco settlements came in, they put all of that money into a fund, and now I've lost projects that we're competing for over in Marion due to that I think it's called the Golden Leaf Foundation, or I think it is Golden Leaf, whatever it's called. They've invested their money, and now they use that dollar amount that they've now accrued through, I guess, since the 90s or early 2000s, to now recruit industry. Why don't we have things like that? Why don't we look into things like that? Creating incubator space, creating spaces like I look down in Charleston. We have, I think it was called the Warehouse. And don't quote me on this. I could be incorrect because I cannot remember the name of what it was. But essentially, it was a restaurant incubator space. There was 5 or 6 restaurants that were in there again, and it was a county-owned, and I don't remember if it was county or city, but it was a government-owned building space that it was almost just metal walls that they had put up and then had commercial kitchen in. So you had 5 or 6, again, I don't remember exactly how many there were, but restaurants that got the opportunity to go test out their product and, again, have a lower overhead up front than trying just to go all the way in and have a rental or your own brick and mortar. Now they were able to come in, spend, and I think it was a 6-month rotation, and essentially I think it was the top 2 got to keep the spot in there as far as revenue. They got to keep their spot another 6 months and cycle in and out. So it gives, again, an opportunity for restaurants and I guess hopeful restaurant owners to kind of test drive their product before. So things like that we can provide if we have a revenue source. But again, we're trying to spend too much on first off saying that our water system provides this and that when it doesn't. But also, again, spending time, fountains downtown are great. New buildings are awesome. But at some point, we've really got to address the living needs, quality of life. We can't do so without really focusing on infrastructure and then letting the rest of the dominoes fall into place. And again, that's kind of my 2 cents with it. And again, I want to make sure I'm up front. I don't think that is our current council's fault. I think it's decades of decisions that have been made to neglect. But I think and I am happy to hear our council start to discuss it, but it needs to be the forefront of every discussion, in my opinion.
I guess sometimes it'd be hard to have the foresight into what the future holds in the community. So is it possible, because I think this ties into the next thing that I wanted to ask you about. You say decades of decision-making that lead to where we are here now. Sometimes I think people don't think about that. We're right here and now, microwave generation of people, but that's a lot of times not how things work. There's a trajectory of decisions that take us to where we are at the current time. We've had a lot of growth. I remember, I was born in the late 80s, right there at McLeod. And I mean, I've watched Florence develop a whole lot from what it was in 1992 and some of my earliest memories. And so maybe that has something to do with it. Maybe it all wasn't, some things aren't necessarily negligence. They're just a lack of foresight. That ties into what I wanted to ask next. As a realtor, one thing that I look at is we have a ton of residential development going on.
Absolutely.
And so not just, necessarily in the city, but just in the county in general, but everybody's coming into the city. So we have a lot, hundreds and hundreds of homes that have gone up in recent years, that are going up now, and that are approved to go up soon. And my curiosity is, in terms of infrastructure, is our road system. So the expansion on Alligator, I think that was huge. I take Alligator a lot whenever we're going out to Effingham. So I get the firsthand feel the benefits of that a lot of days, especially on Sundays. It's kind of quiet over there anyways, but still, that was a good thing. But I'm just curious, how do you address all of this growth in terms of road infrastructure once you get inside the city limits?
See, and I'll go back to, I guess, my original point about resume. I do think through my time, I built a large network with our state and federal legislators. And when it comes to roads, that's typically majority of that money is coming down from the Department of Transportation, which is, again, a state program. So having the opportunity to kind of work with our state legislature, because ultimately they're going to be the ones fronting about 90% of that bill. So working with our state legislators, working with, again, and I'll go back to bridging the gap from the state legislators to our citizens, because we do have, we've got potholes left and right that we can be out there fixing. We've got roads that aren't up to par with our growth, like you said. I look at 5 points at 5 o'clock or at any time in the afternoon on a Friday. You're liable to sit at that light 3 changes before you're there. And ultimately, that can be about 30 minutes.
Especially when people don't know to pull out a little bit.
Exactly.
And when the light turns red, take a left.
And then you've got the others that'll just go straight 30 seconds after and cause almost a huge crash in there.
Yeah.
But,
opposite problem, yeah.
Exactly. But it's I do think having that network with let me say this, I think that we have a a great state delegation to work with, and God rest his soul. So we used to have Senator Leatherman, who was a huge proponent for infrastructure, and had a lot of power at the state house to kind of get things done and get things appropriated our way. And so we were lucky to have him. Again, we're lucky to have Senator Rickenbaugh. I love Senator Rickenbaugh. I love Miss Rickenbaugh as well. They are two just of the best people you can again talk to. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. I've never met somebody who can network and work a room like Mike, and it's just a hell of a feat to have for him. And I've always respected that and looked up to him. And he was actually a big player in why I ended up. He was one of the mentors that I kind of had kicked out the idea of running to, and ultimately helped me to make a decision. And so I have the utmost respect for him. Again, I love Philip and Jay as well. I think we have a great group of delegates that are willing to fight for us. But again, having that network again to them and being able to work with them, again, having a long-lasting relationship with the three of them, I think obviously brings a lot to the table, but again, helps with things like that. And again, working with them towards the future. I know that they've seen, you talk about the housing developments. I know Representative Lowe's heavily involved with developing the area. And so working with him, not only in the infrastructure aspect, but also working with him to see how the city can streamline that process. As a realtor, we need housing. We do have a ton of permits that have already been pulled and a lot of new builds going up. But, I think of that AESC, the battery project that's coming. That's 2,000 jobs that we're creating. Quite frankly, our unemployment's below 4%. And actually, it might be below 3.5 now here in Florence. So we don't have the numbers to fulfill that. So there will be people coming in, moving in that we've got to be ready for. Again, we have to make sure our infrastructure can sustain that growth, and also be ready for new growth, like we said. So that's a huge aspect. But from a governing perspective, I think we need to work with these folks, work with the developers, see how we can, again, streamline that process and see how we can get these homes up and how we can get them done quick so that we're ready for growth, but also know where growth is coming so we can prepare from an infrastructure standpoint to get there. So I do think that there's a lot that we need to be doing proactively, so that we don't find ourselves in a worse situation in 20 years down the road. It's again, we can say that it's decades and decades of neglect, but let's learn from our mistakes. If we make the right decisions here over the next 10 years, the next century it will flourish and continue to do so. So I do think we're in a great spot as a city. But again, we have to make some decisions that, again, might hurt some feelings immediately. But I think down the road, we will see that it was a benefit for all, for the county, for the city. And again, just growth in general is always going to help us. But it's going to help from a tax-based perspective. So we can provide more to the citizens, provide more to our businesses. So again, it's a domino effect, but we've got to start and we've got to have a plan, which now it seems like we're running in circles and, again, just waiting for something to stick. But if we could create a strategic plan, again, strategically make moves to go by the plan, then, it's things will start to fall in place. And again, it's all about having that community buy-in. So I really do think when it comes to strategic planning, getting stakeholders from the community again, and developing these coalitions so that we can have a voice, so that our citizens have a voice, so that our business owners have a voice, and working with them to again create a successful economy. If one of them's doing well, again, if we're doing well economic development wise and bringing in these industries, it's good for our businesses because that's more, high. Most of these jobs now are high-paying jobs that are coming. That's people that have money in their pocket to spend locally. It's going to help our restaurants obviously thrive. But the more restaurants we have, the more foot traffic it is for our other businesses. So, it's, again, one of those things where it's not I don't want to say it's a one-size-fits-all type fix, but at least it gets us in the right direction. So once we address those immediate needs, we can start, again, addressing these things, having these conversations that are needed. I look at our city and county councils right now, and there's very minimal discussions. I look at county level, Greg Robinson over at the Florence County Economic Development, and Stephanie for that matter, that they have done so much for the county as a whole, and are continuing to do so. And to me, it just makes sense for the city, for our elected officials to be in constant communication with them, so that we do know what's coming, so we can, again, plan and work with them on what they see. Because, I mean, as much as we want to believe that these projects and this stuff happens overnight, I mean, it's 5 years. It takes a long time for some of these larger projects to come to fruition. And that's just the announcement. Then you've got the 5 years of construction. So being able to work with them and bridge that gap from city to county as well, I think is something that we really need. And it's a shame that we don't currently have. And again, I think Greg and Stephanie over there doing great. Greg's been very transparent since he got to Florence, been very vocal about what we need, what we're doing at the county level. So I think as a county, we really should be thanking Greg for a lot of the stuff that he's done, he's brought to the table. And again, I think an opportunity to work with him. I've got a great relationship with Greg. Again, he's mentored me, he's helped me learn economic development, some strategies, those type of strategies I think are great to have a knowledge of at the city council level. So again, there's a lot that I think we should be doing that we're not. And to me, it just, as a growing town, as a town that is really thriving, maybe not necessarily thriving if you compare it to large metro areas, but for a city of our size, we are doing very well. And we can continue to do so as long as we make the right decisions for growth. I know our infrastructure is struggling, but everything else, from a business-friendly climate to our citizens to a welcome feeling, again, like just and I don't want to say you've got that Southern community, if you will, where everybody, you either know everybody or you're willing to go out your way to meet them. And I don't want to lose track of that. I think that is important. That's a huge asset that we do have. But building off of that, and again, working to continue to grow, but growing in ways that we're not going to lose our hometown feel.
That's something that, in my field, we get to look at a lot. And I know it's not just me. Some of the folks, some of my colleagues, probably a lot more so than me, but just myself, in the last roughly 3 weeks, I've had calls from Chicago, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, New Jersey, and North Carolina, all of people that were looking to our area to move here. And 4 out of those 5 have actually either already made the plans or, are well on their way. So there are people all over the country, and those had nothing to do with the battery plant. Those are just people that are looking at our area. Myrtle Beach has been flooded with people from all over the country. That spilled over into Conway. And I think, and certainly, I'm guilty to do a lot in terms of marketing this on my end, but that's got a lot of people looking at Florence, and rightfully so. I mean, I think financially, that's definitely something that they should be considering. They should be considering our area. It's a great community. So there's a lot of reasons to look at Florence, but from the side where you would be sitting in that situation, and a lot of us as citizens and residents, that strategic planning is going to be important, because as much as Florence has grown, there could be good reason to expect that all these houses that are going up are going to be filled up about as quickly as they go up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. A lot of them are getting bought right before. I mean, as soon as they break ground, you're in that market. It is. It's Myrtle Beach sees, I think, and I haven't seen the numbers here probably since a couple years ago, but I know, I think back in 2022, it was an average of 20 million visitors a year. I mean, think about majority of them are driving through Florence. So why not pick up off that? That's an opportunity. One of the largest line items in our state's budget is to the Myrtle Beach Chamber, because of how much tourism they do draw. We look at tourism from the state's economy; it's one of our largest revenue creators. So finding a way to pick up off of that is huge. And again, with such a thriving community, I look at our restaurants. That's a great opportunity as people are driving through to get to pick off of that. To again bring some folks in that don't want to wait till they get to the beach. So then again, hopefully, as our small business owners again are gaining foot traffic off of that, just from a tourism perspective. And there's again numerous opportunities as we do grow. Again, Myrtle Beach, like you said, I think it's the for the 6th, 7th year in a row now, was the fastest growing mid-sized metro in the country. Yeah. So with their growth, It's like you said, it's coming this way again. I'm over in Marion, so we're itching for it to get down. It looks like it's getting to Ainer already, so it's coming this way. And like you said, we're a little bit over an hour away from the beach. There, we're 2 hours from Charleston, an hour from the capital. We've got, as far as location, we are close proximity to everything. We even got the Dillon Port, right, the inland port right down the road in Dillon. So from a business standpoint as well, we're very strategically located, not far from North Carolina. You've got Charlotte right down the road.
Yeah. Fayetteville.
Exactly. Yeah, it's we're in a unique position where we really can grow. And again, South Carolina for the past 2 years has been in the top 5 for as far as population growth per capita. So that's a huge feat for us, because that's never been. We've always been considered a retirement state, but now we're starting to see folks come in and businesses are following suit. So it's great to have that, and we need to keep building off of that, in my opinion.
Just as that example, small sample size, but out of those calls, only one of those couples would have been retirees. So these are working people, these are families. So
that's awesome.
People are looking at our area. That's the bottom. They really are. I don't think a lot of people are aware of that, but it's true.
Absolutely. And that's great. Again, I say we need to maintain that hometown feel, but we, it's great to pick up on, because that's still new talent we're bringing. That's new ideas, new mindsets, and it's always good to have a good mindset as far as in your community, because sometimes we do want to kind of be too stagnant. A lot of folks from Florence don't want that change, and sometimes there is necessary change. Again, I'm all about maintaining that hometown feel. I'm all about retaining hometown talent, but sometimes you do have to have an outside voice to say, hey, why are you doing it this way? And why haven't you considered doing it this? That's not recreate the wheel. They're doing it this way. It's a lot easier, a lot more cost effective to do it a different way. So it gives you an opportunity to hear from outsiders that normally you wouldn't.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying completely on that. And I think a lot of people do feel that way, but I think at least for now, we're situated in such a way that we actually have a unique position to kind of do both. So we really have that small town, tight-knit feel in the community, but yet we've grown enough and are growing that we have access to a lot of features, and so it's good. But even stuff like what we're doing on this platform is really, that's at the heartbeat of why we've designed this the way that we have, is to try to preserve and even facilitate or undergird that tight-knit feel that Florence has. So I think that we're in a position we could do both for a long time.
I agree.
We play our cards right.
I agree with you. And the other thing is, we look downtown, we've got like old abandoned, and we've done good at renovating really Dargan, really that the whole square downtown. Mm-hmm. But there's opportunities downtown to continue to grow. And a lot of things that folks don't know about are the tax credit programs. And I guess in economic development, I've utilized them. I've really been tried to be very vocal about how much they really can help you at a project, how lucrative they can be. But especially from a business owner standpoint, restaurant, some of them, it's like abandoned buildings. You can gain 25% tax credit, and it's a transferable tax credit, which means you can essentially sell that tax credit for cash, and bigger corporations tend to buy them. But like abandoned building tax credit, that's 25% of the upfit of your building to anything on the building. So if you say it takes you, and again, just to use regular number or round numbers, say it's $1 million to upfit a building that you're looking for when it comes to all of, again, your restaurant, your grease traps, everything. 25% of that investment will in turn come back to you by utilizing these programs. There's a historic building tax credit. Same thing. You could stack those two. We actually were doing a project to build a restaurant. It was a mixed-use commercial building over in Marion, and it actually we were about to break ground, and then I got injured. So now we actually are in the process of selling that building with the plans. But again, it was 50% because it was an abandoned building. It was a historic building. We were working with this, and there are a couple mandates with the Historic Society that you do have to follow. But 50% of it was going to be covered through tax credits. And programs like that, people just don't know about. And again, why don't we have seminars out there to show these programs too? I look at like Hotel Florence. That whole building was renovated through those tax credit programs, which is great. And it's awesome. And what that group's done for our downtown area, we should be forever grateful. because that was what initiated our growth. But why are our city officials not still out there showing and talking about those programs? We've got plenty of buildings kind of in the more than that square that could be utilizing these programs. And again, it makes that risk and overhead cost up front a lot less risky if you've got 25%, 25% is coming back to you, or even 50%.
Yeah.
And I just don't think that programs like that are made aware to the public like they should be, because stuff like that is it's lucrative, but also it helps develop these areas that right now it's, abandoned buildings ultimately end up inhibiting crime. They're a danger. A lot of times they've already been taken over by the county or the city. So now you've got, and I'm a firm believer that government should never be in the real estate market. So why are we not only just holding these buildings in our pocket, if you will, but they're also depreciating as we just let them go and get more and more abandoned. So now not only is it not cost effective to get rid of them, but now it's costing us and the taxpayers more money to maintain them. So why not instead work with developers, work with someone to get these buildings done? Again, it's just providing more opportunities downtown. Maybe even from a housing perspective, if they are 2 stories, let's do housing up front, up top, and small, whether it be restaurants downstairs, whether it be businesses downstairs. But let's work to actually having and again, I think it all goes back to strategic planning, but working on a plan to know what we want. And then again, broadcasting and being transparent with these programs, because again, it is very lucrative and there's state grants to go towards it. So there's no reason we shouldn't have already been on the forefront doing that. I'm very happy that we've gotten as far as we have without being so upfront about it. But there needs to be a lot more. There's the
Is that Gremlin?
Yeah, that's Gremlin. That as you can see, that's why.
Yeah. Hannah Davis is city development that Hannah's with, right?
So she's I think it is. I think it's Main Street Florence is what the organization's called. And Hannah. I've actually had Hannah come in and give a presentation over in Mullins. To the city of Mullins, because what she's doing is very, very important. But some of those other programs, and she'll tell you too. She'll tell you about. I think that we need to be more upfront about them. But what she's done, and I know I gave Greg and Stephanie a shout out. Hannah Davis has done a ton for especially downtown.
Yeah.
And I'm a firm believer that it kind of all starts downtown. You look at the Charlestons, the Greenvilles, their downtown has really grown, and then everything else has followed suit. I commend her for all of the work she's done, because where we've come from a decade ago, I mean, as well as I do, when I was in school, I wasn't going to Dargan Street, and now it's where everybody wants to be.
Yeah, nothing like what's going on now. And I'll say, so I met with Hannah Davis because we've looked into some things and wanted to explore what credits were available. And it wasn't until I got into her office that I learned kind of the fullness of what's being offered, especially if, say, you were looking to set up a restaurant in downtown Florence. And so we were kind of exploring some options and ideas, still are to an extent. But what I wanted to say is that's a fantastic point. And so another thing that I'll do is down in the description, if you had this on your mind, there could be opportunities available to you. Something may be more feasible than you realized that it was. And so I would say, at least from my experience and knowledge, you contact Hannah Davis with City Development, and she could walk you through some of what's available and what maybe some of those credits and benefits or grants are that are out there and what that could look like for you. Absolutely.
It from an overhead perspective, it's huge. It really can minimize that risk from an investment standpoint. And they're there to be utilized. And actually, the attorney that was heavily involved with the legislation on it is actually from right down the road in Marlborough County. So, and a great resource. He's got a firm, his law firm now works pretty specifically with them. And again, that's who we used. He explained it. It once we've kind of got our hands dirty, if you will, on our project, we realized how lucrative it is, and again, how it really can affect. I mean, a lot of these investments that downtown areas, especially in more rural areas, they don't make sense from a cost, or looking at your cost benefit analysis, they don't make sense at all without incentives. But those incentives are statutory, so they're there, they're just waiting to be taken advantage of, and they're state and federal. So there's a lot of different avenues from, again, both levels of government. And then again, the city can offer. I think there's things like the Bailey Bill that essentially locks in your property tax rate at a certain rate for a set amount of years. Again, city council has to agree upon that. But things like that to me are, say I go buy an abandoned building downtown that's got no roof and I buy it for $20,000. My property tax rate will be $20,000 for if county or city agrees to 20-year Bailey Bill. Then for the next 20 years, I'm being taxed as if that building's still $20,000. Even if I put $5 million into it, now it's appraised at $10 million. I'm still paying a property tax as if it's $20,000. So things like that, again, that goes a long way from a cost benefit side and perspective. You can do a lot more when your risk is a little bit lower than what it would be should you invest. I'll make that investment off the top. And again, from an overhead perspective, it allows you to have some wiggle room. You're not as deep in as you would be, and everybody knows, just like houses, as soon as you get it's like especially like a boat. The best day of owning a boat's the two best days: the day you get it, the day you sell it. So that problems are going to arise throughout it, and ultimately having that extra chunk of change in your pocket can go a long way when it does come to opening up a business. So it's a valuable tool to have that not a lot of people know about. And again, I think knowing this, and again, my resume, having experience with this type of stuff, I do think that brings value to our council. And again, I think it's an opportunity to help us grow sustainably, but also give more opportunities to our community. And again, just being transparent with these programs, because it doesn't take Bill Gates to come in and renovate a downtown area. Again, if you know this stuff, because right now it is these big investment firms that are able to take advantage of it across. But that's things, in my opinion, that if a small business owner knew about, they certainly would want to take advantage if it was feasible. So I think it's at least getting it out in front of folks so that there is that opportunity should they want to take advantage of it.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Yeah, I do, because I didn't know about any of that. I forgot who it was that mentioned it to me, but I can't remember who it was. I do remember who it was. And that was just for me to remember, because there's no point in me saying it, but I do remember who it was. And I got in contact with Hannah, and we sat down, and I learned about a lot of things I didn't know existed. So it's a game changer. You're talking about tens of thousands of dollars, and if there's needs, there's things that can cover certain needs, certain plumbing things, stuff like that. We were talking about earlier with the water. So there's just a lot of different incentives and breaks that could help. So if anybody out there wants to open an authentic New York, Northeast New Jersey, Philadelphia style deli downtown, PLC's got the old Flowtown Fitness suite is available. That's the one we were considering. I don't mind sharing that. I just want somebody to do it. So there's a lot of breaks out there and opportunities. I appreciate you mentioning that, and I will put some contact information down in the description in case anybody wants to look into that. So it's good to know about this stuff, like Zach was saying. Now, with that said, you've mentioned a lot about restaurants in this conversation. So definitely, this is the Florence Foodies podcast, Florence Foodies platform base. So what we would like to know, helps us all get to know each other, preserves that small town community feel. What does Zach like to eat in Florence? Historically, currently, what do you like?
I guess it really depends on the day. I'm a big fan of Town Hall's bone-in pork chop. And quite honestly, I'm not even a big pork chop fan, but I tried that one time, and that was a game changer. If I'm getting a steak, typically I'm going to Victor's. I miss Percy and Willie's. Speaking of historic, I do miss Percy and Willie's. I grew up.
Most of us do.
Oh yeah, and I grew up on that side of town, and that marinade they had was just so good. I miss that. And I'll say I love Tubbs. Tubbs has been, and I'll give them a shout out. I to my annual meeting every year over in Marion County, they actually cater it. I did it one time. It's a oyster roast and low country boil, and I did it, I guess, probably my first year with Marion County. I made the change to start using them, and let's do an oyster roast. And they have been, I've got about 100, 120 folks come. And after that first year, everybody asked for their cards, wanted to know who we had used. And so we've, ever since then, used them. They catered one of my campaign events too. That's, that shout out to Kyle over there. Shout out to, I love Johnny as well. So shout out to them, because they've been a huge asset to us again, and they're catering all the way over in Marion County for me. Here recently, I've been on a BTJ wings kick. During football season, I love I love ordering wings on Sundays to watch the NFL. And with it being right down the road, I've been on a huge kick now with my girlfriend, and she's not here right now. She's not a big wings person, but she'll go get a sandwich from there if we do go.
Yeah.
So I've been big on them. I miss Subs Plus. Subs Plus used to be my spot. The Hayek brothers were great, awesome to have, and just love their all of their food. I used to love that cheeseburger sub too. But those are kind of the place that from a barbecue standpoint, I love Holt Brothers as well. They've been, heck, when they opened, I was working for Senator Graham, and I think me and my coworker over there probably ate there at a minimum 2 or 3 times a week. At a minimum, again, right when they opened, because it was right down the road. And then, I'm excited to try Elliott's Barbecue over there at the new seminar. I think Tim Norwood's been huge as far as the Florence growth. I think we owe Tim. I think we owe all of that. I mean, Ken. There's Scott. I could go all day with the folks downtown that have really done a lot for the growth of Florence. But again, what Tim Norwood's done, and again, I appreciate all that he's done for downtown. But I haven't made it over there yet. Seeing the videos though, that seminar's come a long way. It was always awesome to have, but now seeing what they've done to it, it is a awesome.
Elliott's is not going to disappoint. And I want to cut you off, but I thought about it. You said something earlier in our conversation about talent leaving home.
Yep, there's one.
So bringing Elliott back home. Shout out to Tim and everybody out there at Seminar. That's a big deal. You got to get out there. Elliott's is not going to disappoint you.
I'm excited to try it. Like I said, I almost tried to have that, see if we could do the podcast over there, but I didn't think about it till too late. And I do think we're going to go try it out this weekend. We're excited. And everything I've seen, it looks amazing. So I know we're all excited to go give it a try.
Awesome. Good answers. So there you have it, straight from Zach. That's what he likes, and I can concur with a lot of those things you said. Some of those are definitely on my favorites list as well. And historically, I've been saying it repeatedly on this platform. Somebody's got to come in there and do Percy's 2.0, man. Somebody can come make it happen. The building, well, I'm not going to get into all that. You could do some things. You got to be creative, but you could work it out and get that Percy's 2.0 going. But that's neither here nor there. What is here and there is early voting for this at-large city council seat started on Monday. At the time you're seeing this, it would have been, I guess, 4 days ago. Hopefully this will get out on Thursday, the 20th is what we're shooting for. So earlier in this week, early voting started. Election day is April the 1st. So hopefully this gave you an opportunity to get to know Zach a little bit more. And if you're in the city, then you need to go out and vote. City Council, this is something that is relevant to our everyday life here in the city of Florence and the county of Florence for that matter, because we're always in the city. So a lot of us working in the city, that kind of thing. So make sure you get out and vote. This gave you an opportunity to get to know the candidates. We got to sit down and get to know Zach. I hope that you found that valuable and enjoyed it. And getting to find out where he likes to eat. Of course, that's part of our mantra. That's part of what we do. So what I want to do is I want to turn it back over one more time before we get out of here. And just, is there anything that you'd like to say or share before we close this one up?
There's one last thing I'd like to say, and I think it's something that gets left behind a lot, but transit. Transit's a huge aspect of growth, and we do have a great transit system. I look over at PDRTA. Don Strickland over there has been amazing. You look at, he's got routes that are, when we talk about retaining talent, he's taking folks from Florence to and hospitality jobs down in Myrtle Beach daily and people don't know about stuff like that. And I do think that that's something interesting. If you guys have an opportunity to look at what all PDRTA is doing. Again, Don's worked with industries over in Marion County. He sees that there is obviously, transit's tough, and it's only getting tougher as interest, it's not interest, excuse me, as inflation keeps going up. It's getting tougher and tougher too to get to certain places and to get to where you want to go at times. But we have a great, for not being a huge metropolitan area, we have a great transit system, and I'd encourage everybody to go take a look at what Don is doing, because again, he's not only working with the hospitals and the key points that you want to get to, dropping folks off downtown, maybe the Walmarts, the shopping centers, yada yada. But he's also working with our industries and our jobs too, make sure that folks again have a ride to get to work, so that we don't have to worry again from a standpoint of our employers looking for employees, but also for the employees looking for jobs that they're able to get to and accessible to them. So that's something huge that I think gets left by the wayside a lot. I think that, and I don't know what our investment from the city is into PDRTA. I'm sure it's something, but I think it's something we could always look to add to, because there's a lot of opportunities there for, again, that are going to assist with growth, but also keeping folks. I know our road infrastructure is not up to par, but transit systems help keep traffic left, or help I guess de-densify, if you will, the traffic. And then again, I don't want to go too deep in that. I would just again encourage everybody to go look over all of what Don is doing. He's amazing. He's very. We talk about the future and looking forward. He's a visionary. He's doing things that I think we all should really look to. And again, thank him for what he's doing, but see how we can assist, because that's a huge asset that we do have, and it's going to be a huge asset moving forward. And then I'll just say again, I appreciate what you're doing. I think this is awesome. A great, we talked about earlier. I think like this is the Joe Rogan of Florence. This is awesome. It's great. And again, you guys are growing. It's great to see such a community behind it that again, hopefully you guys will, whether you support me or not, use this as a voice and a platform. But you guys have, as you continue to grow, that is a advocacy committee in itself. And so I commend you for all that you've accomplished to this point. And again, I would encourage anybody that does have any questions about me, just to go check out my website. It's McKayforFlorence.com. It has my policies that I am campaigning on. The 4 things, we've kind of hit on all of it, but the main one being critical infrastructure, housing, public safety, and then the last one would just be economic development, which again, I think is kind of all encompassing of those 3. But again, I appreciate your time. Check me out on McKayforFlorence.com. Zach McKay for City Council on Facebook. Again, you can see kind of my policy, anything you want to know about me. And on my website, it does have my personal contact information, my personal cell phone number, my personal email. Feel free to reach out if you do have any questions. If there's something I touched on that I can be of assistance with, please let me know. I'd love to help. Again, I hope that you guys will. I hope I will get your vote. I hope you've heard enough from me. But even if not, again, I do this stuff for a living. So some of this stuff I do have pretty good knowledge on. So I'd love to help in any way I can, whether I have your vote or not. Just again, the opportunity to get in front of you. I think we all want what's best for Florence. We might have our own ideas of how to get there. But again, I'd love to work towards that. Again, whether I am your councilman or not. So again, I just appreciate the opportunity to be here. And should you have any questions, feel free to reach out, and I'd love to help in any way possible.
Great. Well, I appreciate it, Zach. I'll put the link to your website down in the description, so that way over the next week and a half, as this is circulating, people can have access to it if they haven't seen it and want to learn more or ask those questions. And I would encourage that too, because tying into the second thing you said, and I appreciate the compliment. I've said it multiple times, even in this episode, and probably till I'm blue in the face, really, just in the history of this channel, but community-oriented really is at the heart of what we're doing. And so I love Florence. I mean, I've been here. I was born at McLeod Hospital. I'm from this community. I told you that where we're at currently, my childhood house was in walking distance. I could walk over there from here if I wanted to. I'm not, though. I'm going to drive home instead, but I could. And so I love this community, and what you're doing, whether it was you or Tanya, whoever actually ends up being in that council seat, but even just to campaign and run for that seat, to me, there aren't people that you could really say epitomize more of what it means to be invested in this community than that. That's no small task. That's no easy journey to even campaign for a seat, especially in today's climate in a lot of ways. So I really respect and appreciate that. And I think that makes a community-centric platform like this the perfect place to come just hang out and have a conversation. And so I've really enjoyed this conversation. I wish you the best. And I always appreciate y'all and your viewership. And with that being said, that'll be a wrap for this 7th episode of the Florence Foodies podcast. Look forward to seeing y'all in the next one. In the meantime, y'all take care.